Halloween in Hollow Creek was never ordinary. The sleepy little town had a way of pulling shadows closer on this night, as though the darkness itself leaned in to watch the living play at fear. Porch lights glowed in soft oranges, fake cobwebs hung heavy across doorways, and the streets pulsed with kids in plastic masks, shrieking and laughing as they hunted for candy. For Max Carter, though, Halloween wasn't just costumes and sweets. It was her stage. At 16, Max had already built a reputation as the girl magician. She practiced for hours, mastering sleight of hand, card tricks, disappearing coins, and impossible illusions that left her classmates stunned. Tonight, she was set to perform at the town square's Halloween carnival, her biggest audience yet. It was supposed to be her night to shine, to prove she wasn't just another kid in a cape but someone destined to turn magic into something real. But as she adjusted her velvet cloak in her bedroom mirror, something shifted in the reflection. At first, she thought it was just the trick of candlelight flickering on her dresser. Then she saw it, behind her, for just a second, a face. Painted white, lips pulled into a jagged grin, and eyes blacker than tar. A jester's mask, looming where no one should be. Max spun around, her heart hammering, but her room was empty. She swallowed hard, brushing it off as nerves. She had been practicing until midnight for weeks, running on too much caffeine and too little sleep. Hallucinations weren't impossible. But the image clung to her brain like cobwebs that refused to be brushed away. By 7 o'clock, she was at the carnival, the town square buzzing with life. Pumpkins glowed along the sidewalks, laughter echoed near the rides, and the smell of kettle corn drifted through the cool October air. Max took her place on the small wooden stage, her deck of cards fanned between her fingers, ready to steal the crowd's breath. The performance went perfectly, until the final act. Her signature trick was one she called the Vanishing Girl. She'd step into a tall wooden cabinet, close the door, and vanish, reappearing behind the crowd in a swirl of smoke. She'd performed it dozens of times, never once slipping up. But tonight, when she stepped into the cabinet, something was wrong. The door shut with a slam she hadn't planned. The latch clicked on its own. And then the air grew cold. Inside, the darkness wasn't empty. It was crowded. Heavy. Like someone else was in there with her. Max felt breath on her ear. Slow, jagged, wheezing breath. Magic, a voice whispered, low and broken, is supposed to make people laugh, not scream. Her chest locked. She couldn't move. The smell of rotting leaves and something sour filled the cabinet. A faint jingling sound, like bells, scraped through the black. Max pounded on the door, her voice cracking as she shouted for help. But outside, the crowd only cheered, convinced it was part of the show. And then she saw him. The cabinet walls weren't wood anymore. They melted into shadows, stretching, warping, until she was standing in a pitch-black void. And in front of her, stepping forward with a crooked, bouncing gait, was the figure from her mirror. The Jester. His mask gleamed bone-white, carved into a grin that seemed to stretch too far, jagged teeth painted in blood-red strokes. His costume was torn, mottled in stains that weren't just fabric dye. Bells hung from his hat, but when they moved, the sound was wrong, sharp, metallic, like chains dragging. Max froze, every ounce of her willpower holding her still. The Jester tilted his head, studying her with black pits for eyes. Then he raised a hand, and from his palm spilled a flicker of darkness, twisting like smoke into sharp, clawed fingers. "Your tricks are cute," he crooned, his voice jagged, sing-song. "But mine?" He leaned closer, the grin widening. "Mine can kill." And with a snap of his fingers, the void around them collapsed. Max screamed as she fell, straight through darkness, straight through her own stage, straight into the Jester's game. Halloween had only just begun. Max landed hard on what felt like cobblestones, the impact jolting through her bones. She gasped, the taste of iron filling her mouth. When she scrambled up, her breath caught. The carnival was gone. She stood in a twisted version of Hollow Creek, like her town had been dragged into a nightmare. The houses leaned at impossible angles, their windows gaping like open mouths. The jack-o'-lanterns flickered not with candles but with pale, pulsing fire. Overhead, the sky bled orange and black, stars smeared into spirals that seemed to watch her. And somewhere in the distance, bells jingled. Not cheerful bells. These sounded hollow, jagged, like laughter breaking apart. Max's instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She forced herself to breathe, remembering the rule her mentor had once told her: magicians don't panic, they misdirect fear. But how did you misdirect something that wasn't human? Where am I? She whispered, her voice trembling. A laugh answered her. The Jester appeared on the rooftop of a warped house, crouched like a grotesque spider. His mask gleamed in the false moonlight, teeth painted in that permanent grin. His bells jingled as he leapt down, landing with a fluid grace no human body should have. "You're in my show now," he said, spreading his arms wide. "And every show needs an audience." At his words, the shadows around them began to twitch. Figures peeled out of the darkness, pale faces stretched into mocking smiles, hollow eyes blinking in unison. They clapped with jerky, puppet-like movements, their hands echoing like bones. Max's skin crawled. They weren't people. They were copies, echoes of the carnival crowd, their features distorted as if painted by a madman. The Jester twirled, his bells rattling. "You like magic tricks, don't you, little dove? Sleight of hand. Smoke and mirrors. Pretty lies." His voice slithered with mock sweetness before twisting into a growl. "But my magic doesn't trick. It takes." He snapped his fingers. The crowd of shadows lunged, mouths gaping wide as if to swallow her whole. Max darted backward, adrenaline snapping her frozen body into motion. She reached into her pocket, fingers closing around her deck of cards, her only anchor to something real. With trembling hands, she flung the cards into the air. They scattered like razor-edged confetti, each one catching in the unnatural wind. Max whispered the words of her practiced spell, forcing her hands into the rhythm of illusion. And against all odds, the trick worked. The shadows flinched back, covering their hollow faces as the cards spun into a cyclone of flashing light. For just a moment, Max stood tall, cloak whipping around her, a magician commanding her stage. The Jester clapped mockingly, slow and loud. "Oh, delightful," he crooned. "You really think parlor tricks will save you?" His head tilted, and the bells on his hat swung with a sharp chime. "Fine. Let's make it interesting." He snapped again. The cobblestones beneath Max's feet split open, the ground cracking like glass. She screamed as the earth fell away, leaving only thin pathways crisscrossing over a bottomless void. A maze. A twisted labyrinth suspended in nothing. "You want to survive?" the Jester hissed, his voice echoing in every direction. "Then win my game. Trick me, outplay me, pull off your greatest illusion. But remember." The air thickened, the shadow audience whispering like dry leaves. "If you fail, your finale will be death." Max stumbled to the edge of the pathway, staring down into the endless black. The abyss pulsed with movement, things writhing below that she dared not name. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, forcing air into her lungs. She had no stage, no audience, no safety net, only a nightmare wearing a mask. But she wasn't about to give up. If this was the Jester's game, then she would play. And somehow, she would win. The labyrinth stretched endlessly, its crooked stone paths suspended in the abyss. Max moved carefully, her boots scraping against the narrow walkway. Every step felt like it could be her last. The air was thick and cold, and the whispering shadows below hissed like 1,000 voices daring her to fall. She gripped her deck of cards tight, the edges digging into her palm. The cards weren't weapons, but they were her anchor, her reminder that she still had her own kind of magic. "Don't look down," she whispered to herself, repeating it like a mantra. "Don't give him what he wants." But she knew the Jester was watching. His laughter echoed from everywhere at once, sometimes high-pitched and playful, other times guttural and inhuman. "Oh, my little dove walking the tightrope. Careful. One slip, and you're food for the dark." Max kept moving, her heart hammering. Then she froze. Ahead of her, standing at the next junction of the maze, was her father. He wore his work jacket, the same one she'd seen him in that morning. His face was pale, but his smile, gentle, warm, made her chest ache. "Dad?" Max whispered, her throat tightening. He stretched out his hand. "Come here, Maxie. You don't have to be afraid. I'll take you home." Her stomach dropped. It looked like him. Sounded like him. But something was wrong. His eyes didn't blink. They were too still, glassy, as if painted on. Max backed away, shaking her head. "You're not real." The figure's mouth twitched, then cracked open wider, too wide. His jaw unhinged with a sickening pop, stretching until his face was a mask of teeth. "Clever girl," the Jester's voice hissed from the false mouth. "But not clever enough." The creature lunged. Max screamed, flinging her hand of cards. They burst into blinding light, exploding into a wall of fire. The false father shrieked, his skin blistering as he crumbled into ash, the sound of chains rattling in his bones. Max stumbled backward, chest heaving. Her trick had saved her again, barely. But the Jester was enjoying this. A burst of laughter cracked through the void, so loud it made the labyrinth tremble. "Oh, delicious. You make illusions to hide truth. I make illusions to break it. Shall we see whose tricks bleed faster?" The pathways around her shifted suddenly, stone grinding against stone. The labyrinth rearranged itself like a living thing, pathways twisting into sharper angles, tighter corridors. Max ran. Her cloak snapped behind her as she sprinted across the stone. The whispering shadows below clawed at her ears, hissing her name. "Max. Max, fall, Max." She turned a corner and skidded to a stop. Ahead, the air shimmered, her own reflection staring back at her. Another Max, identical down to the trembling hands and wide eyes. Her double smirked, raising a deck of cards. "Only one of us gets to live," it said, voice dripping with mockery. "And I play dirtier." Before Max could react, the reflection flicked a card. It sliced through the air like a blade, whistling past her cheek and nicking her skin. Blood welled instantly. Max's stomach twisted. The Jester was turning her own magic against her. Her double advanced, cards glowing like sharpened steel. "Your tricks are cheap. Mine cut." Max backed up to the edge of the path, the abyss yawning behind her. She couldn't outrun herself. She forced her shaking hands to shuffle her deck, cards slipping between her fingers. If the Jester wanted her illusions, she would use them, bigger, stronger, deadlier. The reflection sneered and flung another card. Max flicked her wrist, her own card meeting it midair. Sparks exploded, the sound like glass shattering. Their decks collided in a storm of whirling blades and glowing light, cards slicing the air around them. The Jester's laughter rose, giddy and cruel. "Dance, little dove. Dance with yourself until the abyss eats you both." Max's chest heaved, sweat stinging her eyes. She had one thought pounding in her skull. The only way to beat him, is to out-trick myself. The air split with the sound of applause. Slow. Mocking. Too loud to belong to just one person. Max's reflection froze mid-attack, then shattered like glass, fragments scattering into black dust. The labyrinth dissolved with it, stone pathways curling inward, melting into darkness. Max stumbled as the ground beneath her buckled, reforming, reshaping until she stood on something flat. Wood. The boards creaked beneath her boots. She was on a stage. Rows of shadowy figures sat in the audience, their eyeless faces turned toward her. Their mouths hung open in eternal grins, clapping with skeletal hands that made a sound like snapping twigs. Above them, lanterns swayed, but instead of light, they dripped black tar that sizzled when it hit the floor. Max's breath caught. This wasn't the carnival. It wasn't Hollow Creek. It was a theater pulled from the Jester's madness. And he was the master of ceremonies. The Jester stood at center stage, bathed in a spotlight that flickered like a dying bulb. His bells jingled with each exaggerated bow. Ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, welcome to the grand finale. His voice rattled the rafters, playful yet venomous. Our star performer, the darling dove, Max Carter, the girl who thought illusions were enough to fight the dark. The audience erupted, their clapping devolving into inhuman shrieks. Max's knees shook, but she clenched her fists. I'm not afraid of you. The Jester tilted his head, the grin carved into his mask gleaming. Oh, sweet little liar. Let's give you a proper act, He snapped his fingers. The stage floor split open, and props rose from the darkness, giant playing cards towering like walls, a magician's hat big enough to swallow a person whole, a guillotine smeared with fresh red. A coffin slid forward, its lid creaking open to reveal nails sticking inward like teeth. Max's stomach churned. These weren't tricks. They were traps. The Jester pranced toward the guillotine, running a gloved hand over the blade. Such lovely illusions you've studied, Maxie. But ideal in execution, not misdirection. He slammed the blade down. It sliced through the wood with a thunderous crack, sparks flying. The audience roared with laughter. Max's pulse hammered. Her eyes darted across the props, tricks twisted into death machines. If she wanted to survive, she had to think like a magician, not a victim. The coffin. The guillotine. The hat. They weren't just weapons. They were challenges. Choose your trick, the Jester cried, arms spread wide. Enter the coffin, face the blade, or dive into the hat. Every choice is death. Every choice is mine. Max swallowed hard. She knew it was a trap no matter what. But she also knew the rule of magic, the audience believes what you make them believe. So she stepped forward, forcing her trembling body to stand tall. Fine, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'll play. The Jester's bells jingled in delight. Oh, brave little dove. Max walked to the magician's hat, its rim higher than her chest. The dark inside seemed bottomless, pulsing with movement. She reached into her cloak, gripping her cards tight. She had one idea, and if it failed, she'd never crawl out alive. She climbed the rim and jumped in. The darkness swallowed her whole. At once, icy hands grabbed at her ankles, her arms, her throat. Faces floated past her, screaming silently, her classmates, her neighbors, her mother. Each face twisted into something monstrous before vanishing into the void. Max fought against the grip, flinging cards into the black. They lit up, bursts of light carving tunnels through the darkness. She followed them, lungs burning, until she felt the void bend. And then she fell. She landed hard, back on the stage. The audience howled with laughter, stomping their skeletal feet. But she wasn't alone. The Jester stood beside her, close enough that she could smell the rot clinging to his costume. He leaned down, his grin inches from her face. Clever girl, he whispered, his voice dripping like venom. But remember, Maxie. His hand shot out, clamping around her wrist, ice searing her skin. No illusion is stronger than me. The Jester's grip burned like ice, sinking deep into Max's wrist. She struggled, but his strength was inhuman, his fingers digging into her flesh as though they wanted to fuse bone and skin together. The audience howled, their hollow faces twitching in anticipation. They wanted blood. They wanted failure. Max clenched her teeth, fighting panic. She had only one chance, and she knew it. She forced her free hand into her cloak and snapped her fingers. A plume of smoke exploded around them, choking the stage in a haze of silver and black. The jester laughed, voice echoing from all sides. Smoke and mirrors. You think fog can hide you from me? Max didn't answer. She ducked low, rolling across the boards until her palms smacked against the coffin. The nails inside glistened like hungry teeth, waiting to pierce flesh. An idea sparked. She shoved her deck of cards against the coffin lid, whispering the words of her practice trick, Mirror's Edge. Normally, it was harmless. Just a shimmer that reflected light to confuse her audience. But here, in the jester's twisted world, illusions warped into something else. The coffin shimmered. Then the nails melted, twisting and bending until the inside became a perfect, shining mirror. The jester appeared out of the smoke, bells jingling. His mask gleamed as he tilted his head. What are you doing, Dove? Max's chest heaved. Showing you yourself. And with a shove, she slammed the coffin lid shut. The mirror inside screamed, not with her voice, but with his. The reflection of the jester clawed against the glass, jagged teeth gnashing as if trying to drag its real counterpart inside. The jester froze, his laughter cutting off like a severed wire. His mask twitched. His body jerked in spasms as the mirrored version of him tore at the coffin's walls, pulling against him, dragging. The audience went silent. For the first time, Max saw something new, fear. The jester snarled, wrenching free, his bells rattling violently. Clever girl. His voice shook the rafters, splitting lanterns so tar rained down across the stage. But every trick has a price. He snapped his fingers. The mirror coffin shattered, shards flying across the stage. One piece lodged into Max's arm, slicing deep. She cried out, blood soaking her sleeve. The jester staggered, but his mask's grin widened again, more feral than ever. You thought you could trap me with my own reflection? His voice bled into a growl, inhuman and wet. Then let me show you yours. With a sweep of his hand, the stage walls warped. The floorboards bent upward, forming a frame. Max's own body lifted against her will, pinned as though invisible hands held her in place. And there it was, her reflection. It appeared across the stage, but this time it wasn't just a copy. This one bled where she bled, flinched when she gasped, its eyes filled with her terror. Then, slowly, its expression changed. The reflection smiled. The jester leaned close to her ear, his bells brushing against her cheek. You wanted to out-trick me, Maxie. Then the trick is this, you're not the magician anymore. You're the prop. Her reflection raised a hand. In it gleamed her deck of cards, only twisted, the edges sharp like blades. Max struggled against the invisible grip, tears burning her eyes. She realized the cost of her trick. She had used the jester's power to fight him, and now he had turned it back on her. The audience erupted into shrill laughter as the reflection stepped forward, its glowing cards slicing the air. For the first time since the night began, Max felt her courage crack. Because the worst illusion wasn't facing the jester. It was facing herself. The stage groaned, splitting into shifting platforms as if the theater itself were alive. Lanterns swung wildly overhead, spilling streams of tar that dripped onto the boards with sizzling pops. Max's reflection stalked her across the stage. Its grin was jagged, unnatural, stretching wider than her own face ever could. The cards in its hands shimmered like razors, every flick of the wrist slicing the air with a shriek. Max's chest heaved. The invisible hands holding her down had vanished, but only so she could run. She stumbled backward, clutching her bleeding arm, her boots slipping on the tar-slick boards. The jester leapt into the rafters, bells jangling in manic rhythm. His laughter rained down like shards of glass. Yes. Run, little dove. Run from yourself. Because that's the trick you can never win. Her reflection darted forward, moving faster than she could react. A card whistled past her cheek, opening her skin with a hot sting. Blood trickled down her face. Max gasped, clutching her deck tighter. Think. Think like a magician. Illusion was about control, making the audience see what you wanted. If she could bend the Jester's stage once, she could do it again. But the problem was, every trick cost her something. Her reflection lunged again, slashing a card toward her throat. Max dropped to her knees, flinging her cards in a desperate fan. The stage warped, smoke spiraling into existence. From the smoke rose chains, thick and rusted, wrapping around her reflection's wrists. For a second, Max felt hope. She'd bound it. She'd actually. The chains groaned. Then snapped. Her reflection grinned wider, eyes glowing a sickly yellow. It tore through the smoke like paper, advancing without pause. Max's hope cracked. "Why are you doing this?" she screamed, her voice raw. The Jester dangled upside down from the rafters, swaying like a marionette. His mask gleamed in the dim light, his teeth painted red as fresh wounds. "Because, darling dove, fear is the only true magic. Tricks vanish. Fear lasts forever." The reflection struck again, forcing Max onto her back. She kicked, boots smacking against the boards, barely deflecting another razor card. Her blood smeared across the stage, painting it red. Her vision blurred. Panic clawed at her chest. Then she remembered. The trick wasn't to fight her reflection, it was to fool it. Max scrambled to her feet, shoving her trembling hands into her cloak. She pulled out 3 coins, small and harmless. To anyone else, nothing. But to a magician, even a coin could be a weapon. She whispered the words, her voice shaking. The coins glowed faintly, spinning in the air like silver fireflies. Her reflection tilted its head, eyes following the coins, just like an audience member. Max hurled them down. They hit the boards with a deafening crash, exploding into light. The stage fractured, the boards splintering as if a bomb had gone off beneath them. The reflection shrieked, staggering, its cards falling from its hands as its form began to crack. For a heartbeat, Max thought she'd won. Then she saw the truth. The reflection wasn't dying. It was multiplying. From the cracks in the stage, more versions of herself clawed their way out, grinning, bleeding, wielding jagged cards. Dozens of Maxes, each one whispering her name in voices that weren't hers. The Jester clapped wildly, howling with laughter. Oh, magnificent! A whole chorus of little doves. Which one is the real Max? Which one deserves to die? The audience shrieked approval, their skeletal hands slamming together like gunfire. Max's knees nearly gave out. She was surrounded, by herself. By her fear. By the nightmare he had created. And in that choking moment of dread, she realized the Jester was right. The hardest trick of all was surviving herself. The stage quaked beneath Max's boots, splitting into jagged fragments. Her reflections circled her like predators, their yellow eyes gleaming, their jagged cards slicing the air. Each one smiled that impossible smile, each one dripping her blood, each one whispering her name in voices warped and broken. Max. 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 Her chest heaved. Her arms ached from blood loss, her cloak torn and heavy with tar. She couldn't fight them all. She couldn't even tell which one was her anymore. Above, the Jester pranced along the rafters, bells shrieking with each step. His laughter rattled her skull. "Oh, this is divine. You thought you were the magician, but I'm the master of ceremonies. And the audience knows what they want." The audience roared, their skeletal clapping thunderous. Finish her. Finish her. Max staggered backward, her deck trembling in her hands. She only had one card left, the Queen of Hearts. Blood smeared its edges, soaking into the paper. Her reflection lunged. She ducked, the blade card whistling past her ear. Another rushed from behind, claws outstretched. Max spun, thrusting the queen into the air. Now, she whispered, voice cracking, watch closely. The card ignited, flames bursting from her palm. The fire spread, spiraling upward into a ring around her. Her illusions had always been smoke, light, harmless trickery, but now, the Jester's twisted realm gave them teeth. The circle of flame roared, forcing the reflections back. Their grins faltered as the heat consumed their pale forms, shrieking like broken glass. The Jester's laughter faltered for the first time. Max clenched her fist around the burning queen, her voice rising above the chaos. You want a finale? Here's mine. She slammed the card into the stage. The board split open, flame rushing across the wood, devouring props, swallowing shadows. The entire theater ignited, smoke choking the rafters. The audience shrieked, their hollow faces melting as fire consumed them. The reflections writhed, their forms crumbling into ash. Max stumbled to her knees, coughing, her body trembling from the effort. She'd done it. She'd destroyed the illusions. But the Jester, he stood untouched at the center of the burning stage, his mask gleaming in the inferno. His grin had widened, jagged and endless. Oh, Maxie, he crooned, voice warped by the crackling fire. A trick so bright, so bold, but you forgot the first rule. He leaned close, bells jingling in the smoke. Magic only works if the audience believes it. And I don't. He snapped his fingers. The fire froze midair. Smoke curled backward. The stage stitched itself together, boards snapping into place. The audience reformed, clapping louder than ever. Max's heart shattered. All of it, her fire, her trick, her victory, undone with a gesture. The Jester towered above her, his mask inches from her face. And so, little dove, he whispered, voice a blade against her ear, the curtain falls. The audience roared. Curtain falls. Curtain falls. Max's vision blurred. She had nothing left. No cards. No tricks. No strength. Except one. The oldest rule of magic. Misdirection. With the last of her strength, Max slumped forward, letting the Jester's grip tighten on her throat. She whispered, barely audible, check your pocket. For the first time, his head tilted in confusion. He reached into his tattered costume. Inside was the Queen of Hearts. His mask twitched. His bells went silent. For a flicker of a moment, Max saw something impossible, hesitation. She yanked free, throwing herself into the abyss off stage. The world exploded into black. Silence. When Max opened her eyes, she was lying in the real carnival square. The stage was gone. The crowd was gone. Halloween lights twinkled harmlessly overhead. Her chest heaved. She was alive. She had escaped. But when she reached into her pocket, her heart stopped. The Queen of Hearts was still there. And faintly, from the card, came the sound of bells. Jingling. Getting closer. The Jester wasn't finished. The trick wasn't over.